the awakening to the idea of the importance of embracing and stepping into living a whole life. All right, and so today my talk is living holy or living holy. I feel like it's an 8th grader's literature or English grammar lesson, right? Holy, holy. Okay, so, and that's why I was saying holy, holy way. Get it? It all fits together. How fun is that? Fun Sunday here at CSL TV. Okay, I cracked myself up. Let's start again. And so what we've been doing this month is realizing the importance of this, is putting our attention, we know in metaphysics that what we put our attention on expands, what we put our attention on grows, and sometimes when we forget certain things, the leash goes out on our knowing, that our life gets what I like to call the specific spiritual term wonky. Right? And so sometimes it takes putting our attention back on these things to allow it to expand in our experience. So this month we've been looking at what it means to live a whole integrated life. And so we started with realizing that there's parts of ourselves that maybe we might not like very much. And instead of pushing them away or pretending they don't exist or pretending that we're something that we're not, that the powerful path, the spiritual path is to awaken to that and start to embrace all the parts of ourselves. Find a way to find some peace in our hearts with the things that we judge ourselves so harshly about. And whatever that is, right? So we've talked about that. We've talked about the importance of leaning on that divine presence. That there's a power in a presence, as Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, teaches us in the world, and that we can, in the universe, and it's there for us and for our good. And we can lean on it, we can depend on it, we can live our life as part of it. And then last week we talked about the importance of one of the powerful paths of stepping into living a whole, full, integrated life is creating and cultivating a forgiving heart. That practice of forgiveness is not just a one-off, one-time thing, but as we cultivate that essence and presence of forgiveness as a way of being, then we are much more able to be present with the blessings in our lives and not just focused on the challenges and the betrayals and the difficulties, right? Because what we put our attention on, what? Expands, yes. So what we put our attention on expands. So if you're looking at the challenge, if you're looking at the pain, if you're looking at those situations that we label betrayal, what's going to happen? You're going to get more of that. When we practice forgiveness and we look at what the peace that is available to us, we get more peace, right? See where we're going with that? So this week, we're going to put it all together and talk about what it means to fully step into that presence of living holy. And again, when I say holy, you can picture whichever word you want. It's going to stay up there for a while. Because they're the same thing. And so I'm not going to do a talk about how it's important to balance our physical bodies and make sure we're eating that kale that we need to eat to take care of ourselves and spending time alone and making sure that we have some fun in our lives and all that. Because you know all of that, right? That's not anything new. What I'm talking about today is how we can immerse ourselves and really take that step to declare, yes, I am living a spiritual life. We are a center for spiritual living. And what that means to me is that everything that we experience, everything that we go through, everything that we see, and everything that we know has a spiritual component. So we're not the kind of church that where I, say something to you on Sunday, and we all get all fired up, yeah, go God, and then we go home on Monday and then live some other kind of life, right? That's not the goal here. The goal here is for us to awaken to the fact that we are on a spiritual path. There's a saying that we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. Well, one of my mentors, one of my teachers, Dr. Katherine, said a couple weeks ago to us, the leadership, she said to us, that's not what it is. You're spiritual beings having a spiritual experience through a human body. And so yes, there's a sense of limitation because we are in these vehicles that are just the cars that we drive around during this life. And yes, we look like we're all different and separate and having our own paths, and everything that happens in the world looks like it's happening outside of us. But when it comes down to it, we're all connected. There is an essence and a presence that permeates all things, and that everything is a spiritual unfoldment. And there's great joy in that. There's great hope and promise in that. Because it means that we're never stuck in one situation. Just because it looks like something is coming down the pipe to us, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the thing that's going to happen. as long as we don't put our attention on it and affirm it and call it into our experience. And everything that happens in our life and everything that shows up, all those bumps on the road or those challenges, they're there for our good. And I'm going to say that till the cows come home. Because it takes a whole long time for us to get that idea. Because we can say that and we can know it and we can, have the understanding that in theory that that's how it happens. But when you're walking through your life and something painful happens and something difficult happens, that's when I want you to remember that. I want you to have your experience of what's happening in your life, but know in the back of your head, this too is God. This too has some good for me in it, and I'm going to trust until I see it. So we are called, if we're going to live a holy life, if we're going to live a spiritual life, we have to develop trust in that which we can't see. And when it comes down to it, I love that this is religious science. Wow, I have a lot to say today and I didn't even know it. I'm hearing myself and realizing that I'm going on down this path that I guess I'm very passionate about what I'm talking about today, and I didn't even know it till I was halfway through the beginning of this. And so this is what I want us to know is that as we move along in our journey, that everything is there to remind us that something greater is happening than what we can see. And so it's a process of awakening. We are in this life to awaken to the truth that we are spiritual beings having a spiritual experience. And so the way that we live holy is to cultivate that presence, is to remember it, is to find a way that we can walk this path with that awareness within our conscious minds. And so not that it's just like after, right? Have you ever had the experience where something happens and it gets a little messy? Maybe we have some reactions, and maybe we don't. Maybe it's not so pretty. And then a couple weeks later, oh yeah, it was all spirit. Yeah, you can see how there was an unfoldment that brought you to a place. A lot of times it's with job changes. I get a lot of people who come to me who have had a job change, right? So that they've been let go of a position. And they'll be really upset about it. Like, oh my God, can you believe they fired me? I can't believe it. 25 years I've been with that company and da 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 da. Well, how was that job for you? Oh my God, I hated it for 15 years, you know? Wait, what? So this is a bad thing? You stayed 15 years longer than maybe you should have. And now you've got a new opportunity to create what you want. And so it's hard sometimes in the middle of those things to trust the fact that God's in it. Sometimes it's hard in the middle of the challenges and the difficulties, and let me tell you, I'm not saying that this is easy. I know that we walk, everyone has these amazing stories, and we walk through great challenge in our life. But I can tell you that even in the most difficult moments, there's something there to hold on to. And there's something there that's there for you. And as we turn towards it, it turns towards us. It turns towards us. But we have to open and welcome it. Sure, that's what I said. God's moving. God's moving today. All right, so the thing about the science of mind in this philosophy is that it's not for everybody, and I'm just going to say it's not for everybody, because we are called to take responsibility for what we've created. We are called to acknowledge that we have a part to play in everything that we experience. Now, I'm not saying that we're at fault. It's not a blame game. We have to rise above that idea of right and wrong, and he did right and she did wrong, and whatever that is. It's not about that. It's about this matrix of coming together, of events and people and unfoldment that allows us to come into our strongest, most powerful expression of who we've come here to be. And so, in order to be able to harness this power, in order to be able to live in harmony with it, we have to take responsibility that we have a part to play in everything that we experience. And so that's why the study is not for everyone, because some people like to stay in their stuff. Some people like to stay in those places where they can blame others, right, and not take responsibility. And so there's a development of consciousness that happens. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this. It's back to school time, right? A lot of our kids have gone back to school or are getting ready to in the next couple of weeks. We're about to start a whole new round of Science of Mind classes that I'm excited to talk a little bit more about later. But it's that time, you know, it's that time. And so I thought that maybe today I would do a little teaching of one of the ways of looking at our spiritual development. And so there is a growth in spiritual development. We teach this in a lot of classes, and you may have heard it there. But I think it's good for us to remember this. That there are stages of consciousness development. And so what we're talking about today are the kingdoms of consciousness. Anybody ever heard of that before? People in class have heard of that before. Okay, that's why you should go to class. Okay, but everyone's going to get shape. All right, so how we operate is this. Is it working? No, hold on. Yes, I did a PowerPoint, ready? Okay, Kingdom 1. There we go. So Kingdom 1 is this space of, so there's 4 kingdoms, so don't worry, this isn't an hour lecture, I promise. All right, so Kingdom 1 is a space where everything is done to me. Okay, in Kingdom 1 you have victim mentality. So somebody else did that to me. Somebody else did that to me. And so this is a space of blame. And this is the world that we live in. Right? It's really sad to me that that's how it is. But when we're out in culture, it's like this person did this and that person did that and that person's at fault and all of that. And so there's all of this idea of someone's right and someone's wrong. There's a black and white. And when we live in this realm of consciousness, we can't get beyond being a victim. And go back to what I said at the beginning, when you look at the world a certain way, you draw those experiences to you. So if someone's living in victim consciousness, what do you think they're going to have? More people to blame. They're going to have more experiences that are going to bring that idea to them. It's the poor me mentality. They make life they are making my life difficult, and it's because of them. If you ever hear those phrases, those thoughts, those ideas, or someone saying that, you know, and the whole idea is it could be anybody or any circumstance outside of themselves, but your happiness is dependent, your well-being is dependent on something that happens outside of you. That's Kingdom 1. I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. All right, so Kingdom 2 is another step up because it's done by me. This is the realm of personal power. So we're rising in power, right? We're rising in our self-understanding because we realize that we have a part to play in our life. But that can only go so far as I personally can do it by me, right? And so sometimes I think about, it reminds me of when my daughter was 2, right? I can do it myself. Right? And I can hear myself when she said that to me about putting her shoes on. I can do it myself. And then 2 hours later, I'm still trying to get her to put her shoes on, you know? When she started saying that to me, it reminded me of what I sound like in my head. I can move those tables. I can move those chairs. I can do it myself, you know? Like there's something about, that's the fiercely independent piece of us, that part that is, and it's not bad. None of these are bad. But it just, when it blocks us from connecting to the divine life, that's when they get to be a challenge. This is the place of the ego, right? And I don't want to misalign our friend the ego, because the ego is necessary. We need our egos in order to get up in the morning and get out of bed and walk around in our lives. They're necessary. But when they get overinflated, when they think they're driving the bus, they're going to run us into a wall, right? They're going to drive us right into a wall. And so this is the place of separation. This is a place of being alone, you know, and this is still a place of blame. But in this realm, who do we blame? We blame ourselves. And so that's when we set an idea of what we can accomplish, then we get all excited about it, and then maybe we don't reach the goal, and then we just realize we're not worthy. Anybody have that before? Right? The idea that we are so judgmental on ourselves, on our abilities, and the idea that we're supposed to come forth and be beautiful, perfect, empowered, right? You know, that's how we're supposed to show up. And how embarrassing is it when we fall? This is another realm that we're living in out in the world. There's a lot of that. And so the idea is to move into a place where we are connected to spirit. So once we hit the 3rd kingdom, you're in a place of greater connection. This is the place, the Kingdom 3 is the space of God moving through me. This is the first step in the spiritual realm. Maybe you've had an experience of awakening. Maybe you've had one of those spiritual experiences. Anybody have those where you get a true sense of the other, of that there's something greater than you are? Maybe you had a spiritual sign from a beloved who had passed on that is so real to you that you can't deny that something woo-woo is happening here, right? That's my favorite spiritual word. You've got two of my favorite spiritual terms today, woo-woo and wonky. All right? So, when life gets wonky, sometimes the woo-woo happens to remind us that something else is happening, right? And so then we get to a place of surrendered connection, that we are a channel, that God moves through me. It's not me, but the divine that does the work, right? That we're a place of a spirit kind of moves through us, but it's also a place of surrender. And so this is a place where still there's a challenge to it, because this is a place where sometimes you feel God and sometimes you don't. And sometimes when we can't find God, then we feel like our faith starts to wobble. And we can't really step into that goal of being fully embodied and living holy, because where's God? It's still outside of us, or it's still moving through us, but where is it? I don't feel it. So then what the goal is, what the vision is to move into Kingdom 4, which is the divine space of as me. This is where we want to live, and this is where there's no separation, where everything we are and everything we experience is God unfolding as us. It's where we develop what I call spiritual sight, where we can see that driver that cut us off on the highway getting on the 15 on a Friday afternoon. I did that this week, that was fun. That experience is still, there's a divine element to it, that something's unfolding. That when we meet someone in the grocery store, or we have a conversation with someone in the cheese section, like I did this week. I had a conversation with a lady in the cheese section of the grocery store, and she just started chatting with me, and 5 minutes later I had heard that her eldest son had just passed. And so I ended up, within 3 minutes, right? I was talking about feta cheese, but I knew that was a divine connection for that to come forward, for me to be able to look at her. I didn't even tell her I was a minister, and she didn't know why she was telling me the story. But I opened my heart to her, and I was present with her in a way that I was invoking the divine blessing upon her. And she just kind of followed me through the rest of the store. She did her shopping behind me, and I was like, am I supposed to talk to her more, John? What am I supposed to do with this? Like, I was walking around going, wait a minute, okay. And no, it wasn't about that. It was just about the fact that I know that everything that happens in my life is God expressing. And so when we get to that place, when we get to this place when we're living here, sometimes we're called to live in the question. Sometimes we're called to realize that I don't understand why this is happening, but I know God's in the middle of it. And I know it so strongly that I can just hold on to that. And I can hold on until I can really see it, or I can understand it. I've enjoyed this Mary O'Malley book so much this month, What's in the Way is the Way. I really love it. It's back in the bookstore, just in case if you're interested. We've got a couple of copies left. But one of the things that she reminds us is that we have been in a path of the fix-it mentality on ourselves forever. I think the self-help movement is one of the great blessings of life in the last 20 years, but it's also one of the biggest challenges, because it has taught us that we have stuff we have to fix on ourselves. There's nothing to be fixed, only to be loved. You're not broken. You've never been broken. No matter what you've experienced, no matter what you've gone through, no matter what challenges or what you've experienced, you're not broken. And there's nothing to be fixed. What I love about Mary O'Malley's book is that she reminds us of that, and she reminds us that she pulls spirit into this. Because if we are part of the divine creation, if we're part of God's unfolding universe, there is a divine perfection to each and every aspect of it, and there's a divine perfection to each and every one of us. And that is why we are here. And so it's in embracing who we are. It's in loving us from head to toe in every aspect and every weird little quirk. I've done plenty of talks about how quirky we all are and how great that is, and how we're supposed to, the freak flag one from July, go back and watch that on YouTube. That we all have a way of being that's uniquely ours, and life is not full unless all of us are expressing who we've come here to be fully. And that's the goal. The goal is for us to be a full, whole expression of who we've come here to be and to live in that fourth kingdom. And so the truth is that we exist in all these realms simultaneously, okay? This is not a graduated thing. So there's a part of us that plays the victim, and there's a part of us that knows that I can do it, and there's a part of us that allows the channel to flow. In those moments, there are glimpses, and there are sparks, and there are moments when we are embodied as the divine and fully expressed in that wholeness. And so the idea really is that when you hear that victim in your head, not to scold it, not to yell at it, not to cut off another part of yourself and say that's wrong. It's not. It's to remind it. It's to remind that part of yourself, you're not alone. You're not alone. It's okay. And you can end up being your own practitioner. You can be your own counselor in your head. You can hear my voice saying, it's okay. It's okay that that's where you are, but this isn't where we want to live. This isn't how we want to be. It comes down to the fact that you get to choose who you want to show up to be in this life. And you get to choose how much you want to be that divine emanation. That's the challenge of this. That's the challenge of my job. That's the challenge of this path. Let me tell you, the challenge of this job is that I wish I could just wave a magic wand and show you the mirror about how amazing you are and have it be done, right? But I'm not there all the time, and I can't follow you all around with a mirror. See how beautiful you are? See, look, you can imagine that. Yes, I don't know if you want to. Reverend, what are you doing tonight? Oh, Reverend Catherine's over again. She's just showing you the mirror. Oh, okay. No, I can't do that, but you can. You can develop a relationship with the divine of your heart so much so that you can remember who you are. You can awaken to the fact that something else is operating in this life than what it seems like. Every time you think that the world is out to get you, every time you think it's hard for you, every time you think that things just don't work out for me, every time those thoughts come up, that's the thing that needs to be addressed. You got to remind yourself, no, God's here. There's a divine presence and it's here, and I'm not opening to it enough. And so our goal is to support all the aspects of us to move into those higher kingdoms and to live more from those places than from the lower. I had a teacher who's this amazing minister in the movement named Dr. Lloyd Tupper, Reverend Dr. Lloyd Tupper. And he's of the generation past Ernest Holmes. So Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, died in 1960. Lloyd came up in the 60s, and he was a minister late 60s, early 70s. So he's been a minister for, I know this, for over 47 years because I was born in 71, so I know he's over that amount of time. So anyway, so I had the great benefit of being with him as he was speaking to a lot of the new ministers when they were in training, and he shared a piece of wisdom with them that I have kept front and center in my path since then, and I share it with you today in hopes that it supports you in your path. And he said this, that you need to go to the well daily. That you just need to go to the well daily. You need to go and be inspired and be connected with something that feeds you, that nurtures you, that inspires you every day. And so for him, he is a tried and true, born and bred religious scientist. He goes to Ernest Holmes every day. He not only reads Ernest Holmes, but there are these CDs of old lectures of Dr. Holmes, and he will listen to those CDs, so he hears his voice, he hears the way that he taught, he hears that daily. Now, I'm not saying that that's what we should do. It's not, this philosophy is not a place of reverence for one man. We do have great respect for Dr. Ernest Holmes, who wrote The Science of Mind, who created the philosophy, who brought it forward. But we're not a devotional, it's not a devotional to him, but it's a devotional to the teaching. And so what it is for you, what is it for you? I don't know. But you need to go to the well daily, to be re-inspired, to be reconnected. You know, this is a constant practice. And the image that I got of it was that every day we write truth in the sand at the beach, and we expect the next day that even though the wind is blowing and the tide's coming in, that we're going to be able to go and read it again. But that tide and the wind represent what's going on out in the world that we live and move in and of and as. And so maybe we start our days with something peaceful and supportive. If your spiritual practice is a little bit of meditation and some spiritual reading and maybe some writing and journaling. And I don't know about you, but I get so filled, I get so centered, the sun starts to come up, I feel really connected, and then I go through my day. And let me tell you, my day is here, right? It's like most of my days are here, and so, which are great. And you can feel it when you come in here, and still I go through my day, and I get on the phone, and I deal with all the stuff, and I deal with everything. And then by the end of the day, that wind has come, and the wind is blowing, and the tide comes in, and I can't remember how I felt at 6 o'clock in the morning. I feel worn down. And so how do I think that maybe I can do a spiritual practice at one moment and then maybe another week will go by and maybe I'll do another meditation? That's not going to feed me enough to keep me centered and to live holy. If our intention is to live holy, we need to connect to that truth every day and go to the well. And so what is that for you? That's your assignment this week, is to figure out what it is for you that you can touch. And it doesn't have to be a big, huge thing. It's just a reminder. Maybe it's standing in the grass. Maybe it's holding on to a tree. I am a self-proposed tree hugger. Right? Maybe it's a specific reading. Maybe it's spending time with your Bible and the teachings of Jesus. Maybe I don't know what it is for you. But it could be anything, but something that's going to remind you on a daily basis of your divinity, of the blessing that you are, of the fact that this is a spiritual life. That's all it needs to do. And even that reminder is going to feed you and serve you as you navigate your days. Ernest Holmes says that if one would take time once a day at least to let go of all that is not true and lay hold of reality, let go of doubt, distrust, worry, condemnation, and fear, and lay hold of life in its expressions and beauty, truth and wholeness, his mental congestion would be healed. If we do it once a day, finding a way to connect. And so this reminded me, this whole idea of levels of consciousness reminded me of Jesus' teaching of the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son. So if you don't know, Jesus taught, Jesus was the master teacher, and he taught to all of those levels of consciousness, all of those kingdoms of consciousness. Jesus had a teaching that would speak to them, and depending on where you are, it would speak to you in different ways. And so he taught in these stories. And so there's the story of the prodigal son, and I'm going to tell it to you now, and just in case you might not remember it. So the story of the prodigal son is this. This is a man had 2 sons, and one became of age and went to his dad and said, "Hey, I want my inheritance now." Thank you very much. And the father, who is a benevolent, generous man, gave him his inheritance. And so the son went off, the story goes, the son went off to a far land. And he had a good time. Let's just say, he had some fun. He squandered the inheritance really quickly in high living. You can just picture the parties that he had. These days it would include a jet and a yacht and a lot of partying, right? So you got the picture of that? Yeah, okay, I like to make it modern here. All right, and so what happens pretty quickly is that all the money was gone. And at the same time, in that far land, a famine came in, and he fell on really difficult times. So much so that he ended up with, for the time, which was one of the worst jobs possible, because they believed that pigs were unclean animals, that he was a pig farmer, he tended the pigs. And there he was working and so ashamed and realizing he had made a mistake. And he had an awakening one day. That's the key. He had an awakening. He woke up to the idea and said, "Wait a minute. Here I am doing this out here all by myself. And at my father's home, there are servants who are doing the same thing, but who have a better existence. Living with the Father, they have a better existence." And so he said, "All right, I'm going to just go home and throw myself on the mercy of my Father and offer to be a servant in my own home." So he goes home. And as he's starting to approach his home, this is another very specific wording, from far off the Father sees him. And he comes running to him. and embraces him and hugs him and says, what was dead is now alive. Thank you. I'm so grateful you're here. And he didn't even have, this kid had his speech all set. Like he was ready to tell his story and say, okay, Dad, listen, I'm sorry. I'm not, I'll take care of your pigs. He didn't even get it out because the father embraced him so quickly and called forth to put him on the best robe, and he put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And he said, go and get the fatted calf. We're having a big party. My son has returned. And as far as he was concerned, he had returned from the dead because he had lost him. And so they go and they start to have this great big party. And then here comes the other son, who was the good boy and stayed home. And he's a little mad. And there are moments when we can understand that, right? Like, hey, wait a minute. I did what was right. So he says to his dad, he says to the father, he says, hey, what about me? I have never questioned you. I have always done the work. You haven't even given me a goat for me and my friends. What's up with that, basically. And the father says to him, you don't understand. I am always with you, and all that I have is yours. He never asked. He never asked for anything. My question for us is, how often have we done something just because we were supposed to do it? Right? Have you ever done that? Just because you're supposed to do it, and he stayed because that's what he was supposed to do, right? Well, when that happened in your life, how did that work out for you? That's my question. When we do what we think we're supposed to, but we don't feel it, how does that work out? It never works out. So anyway, so this story speaks to us, depending on where we're living, what kingdom of consciousness we're living in, it speaks to us in different ways, right? It's about waking up to our true nature. The two sons represent the moral nature and the human nature, right? So the older son did what he thought was right, but it wasn't true for him. And the younger son was drawn into the physical pleasures of the world with no balance, and he lost his spiritual connection. That's what the significance of the far country meant. Now the Father represents a divine Father, that giving presence that is always giving to us. But it means that we need to accept the gift. We need to be present and recognize it as the gift. They didn't recognize it as that. And so the boys had to wake up to that truth. The other thing that moved me from this story is that the young boy wakes up to the fact that he already had everything he needed at home, right? This is the Dorothy story from The Wizard of Oz, that all you need is at home. And where is home? Home is with the Father. Home is with the divine. Home is with God. And so the young man was willing to take the responsibility and understand that there's an effect to every choice that we make, that there are consequences to our actions, and he was willing to step up and take hold of that and take responsibility. And what happened? The Father embraced him and said, all is well. All is forgiven. Because when we turn to God, God turns to us. When we put our attention on that spiritual presence, that power, it reveals itself to us and as us. And so when we can do that, we move into a higher realm of consciousness, and we create on a deeper level. And so, what's possible for us is that we can create a joy-filled, peaceful experience, no matter what's happening outside, no matter what bumps in the road come. We have the capability of handling anything that shows up because we have the capability to connect with that which can see beyond the experience. It's alive within us. And so, Ernest Holmes has this vision of life, of what's possible. And it spoke so clearly to what we're trying to get to today, and it's this: that I contend with none, argue with none, and am filled with wonderful peace and light. There is no uncertainty about my future, and no fear as a result of my past. I live in an eternal now, which is filled with good alone. Goodness and beauty follow me. Peace and joy accompany me. Happiness and wholeness fill my entire being with a realization of love and perfection. Breathe that for a second. Can you see the vision of life that he is putting forward? And can you see that that's possible for you? This is the true nature of your being, and this is the life that we're called to live. And so as an affirmation, I thought that we would say it together. So let's declare this, because what happens is when we speak a truth, when we not only read it and we know it and we feel it, but when we speak it, we speak our word into being, right? Our words have power. And so let's join together and say this. Ready? I contend with none, argue with none, and am filled with wonderful peace and light. There is no uncertainty about my future, and no fear as a result of my past. I live in an eternal now, which is filled with good alone. Goodness and beauty follow me. Peace and joy accompany me. Happiness and wholeness fill my entire being with the realization of love and perfection. Yes, and so it is. So close your eyes one more time here, and I want you to breathe that feeling into your heart. Find the place where it's alive in you. Happiness and wholeness fill my entire being with the realization of love and perfection. The Holy One is alive as you. You know, again, coming on back, Jesus taught for us to consider the lilies of the field from Matthew 6. How they grow, they toil not, neither do they spin. He teaches us to seek first the kingdom, and all else will be added unto us. How much toiling and spinning have we been doing? Okay? I don't know about you, but I get spinny and I toil a lot. But that's not why we're here. As we wake up to the truth of God alive as us, as we know that it is real, and we go to that well every day to be inspired and reminded of the truth of our being, it reveals itself as our lives. Because what we put our attention on what? Expands. And you are here to expand. And so it is.